Hey everybody, it's another episode recap for Married at First Sight with your professional lovers in training, Patty
and Al.
And we're glad to be with you and to talk about tonight's episode, which was mainly about getting to know you. The couple's friends coming over and mixing together and seeing how they fit and using it as another opportunity for understanding the person that they're married to.
Yeah. Getting to infiltrate the inner circle of the person that you're married to.
Because they haven't seen each other since the wedding.
The wedding.
Right.
They had the honeymoon, been gone a week, and, been
moving in, settling in.
For a week, and now they've had party night.
Right. And then along with that, we saw several of the couples trying to resolve some differences that came out in last week's show, starting with Olivia and Brett, their finances. And they each went out with friends and talked about their issues with their friends.
Well, that was the wives and the husbands.
No. Remember, Olivia went out with a friend. Brett went out with a friend.
Right.
They were talking to their friends about, their financial differences. And then when the wives all went out together and then the husbands all went out together, they always give each other support by asking, how things are going and that kind of thing. But one thing I think you have to be careful of, even when talking to friends, especially about issues, is that your first loyalty, and as you know, we're always going to pull out the book, Becoming a Professional Lover. One of the tips says that your first loyalty is, loyalty is to one's marriage and family. And it basically talks about not putting people, family or friends, in the middle of issues that you're having. You have to be really careful with that. Now, in this case, we can understand because they've been knowing their friends longer than they've been married. And they've been knowing their friends longer than they've been knowing each other.
True.
At the same time, you still have to be careful talking about issues, especially if you're talking about your spouse and issues that he or she has. Because naturally, your family and your friends...
They're going to be on your side.
Oh,
they're going to take up for you.
Exactly.
And to what extent, it can be, well, you can deal with it, or you don't have to put up with it, or, whatever they personally feel. But their personal interjection into your relationship is not really what you need. I mean, you may hear them, but you have to walk a fine line in allowing someone else's feelings or interpretation of what they think your relationship should be,
or opinions,
and have that
take precedence
or find a place within your relationship.
Because, for instance, when Olivia and Brett were talking to their friends about the finances, I feel like the friends were basically supportive of the relationship.
Right.
Whereas when Bennett's friend was talking to him about the possibility of him having to leave New Orleans and move,
I don't like that.
Yeah, but you'll be leaving me.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
I'm not married to you.
Really. And that was the gist of what that conversation was. Well, if you leave, I'm not going to like that.
Yeah, and so I think Bennett's friend kind of overstepped the boundary because Bennett's now married and he's not married to you.
Right. And I mean, I understand a person expressing their feelings about it, but again, your personal feelings about your friend and their relationship with their spouse are two totally separate things, and you no longer have precedent in that situation.
Right.
So,
And it sounded, it'd be one thing to say, "Oh my goodness, if you did that, I would miss you," and man, that would kind of suck. But I understand, you're a husband now. Versus, I don't know how I feel about
I don't
you,
think I like that.
about him going behind a person he doesn't even know, and leaving. So the tone was a little different and out of place for someone outside of the relationship.
Yeah, and I mean,
and not just a relationship, a marriage.
I respect the honesty, but again, how you do it, that it's not your place anymore.
Yeah.
That's all. The dynamics of the relationship that you had with your friend has now changed because they now have someone who is a priority in their lives, and you are not.
And he handled it well.
He did.
And I don't think that it made really a dent in, what his thought process is, because he'd already said, well, we'll just cross that bridge when we get to it.
Right. When we get to it.
But we're talking about the place that friends and family, because family tend to think that they've got more of a place because blood is thicker than water.
Yeah, exactly.
But not with marriage.
True.
There is a place for your family as well, which is outside of any issues that you might be dealing with. Now, the way to talk about issues to family and friends would be if you're talking about yourself.
Right.
Not talking about the spouse.
Right.
Here's what I'm experiencing. What would be your advice for me?
For me, yeah.
Here's what I experience. Not here's what he's doing or here's what she's doing and, what do you think? It's if you're going to talk about yourself and what you might be missing or what you can observe better or what you might do better, that's, to me, different. Because all you can do is control yourself.
Exactly.
And nobody can tell you what to do to force or make somebody else do.
Or feel or whatever.
Right. Yeah. It's you got to talk about yourself. But when it comes to the friends meshing and stuff, I really like the way Amelia and Bennett did their own activity. Yeah. Now everybody else, and we only knew that producers were giving questions because Christina, kept talking to the producers.
Why do I have to do everything?
Yeah,
why are you giving me everything?
And that's the only reason why we knew the producers were actually giving them the questions and stuff and the games to play, right? So it seemed like the producers gave everybody activities,
right?
But Amelia and Bennett did an activity that was authentic to them and their friends,
their quirkiness,
and I love that
uniqueness. Yeah,
because what they ended up with was a great mural to put on their wall that showed the support of their friends for each other.
Yeah, I mean to me that was a memory. That was an activity that became a memory.
And it was, as I said, the word authentic to them.
Right.
Instead of coming across as production driven, which is what happened with Christina and Henry. Everything in their interaction tonight, this week, felt produced. Yeah. Yes, and forced. Yeah. And, okay, this is what we're doing for the camera. Well, that's why you can't have any kind of authentic conversation. You can't, the awkwardness between the two of them is so palatable. I mean, it's still painful to watch.
But I thought that there was some. I thought that there was some transition in there somewhere when they were talking to friends, and finding out a little bit more about each other.
Well, we had hoped that, and looking at Christina's behavior when Henry's friend told her, well, first of all, Henry's friends confirmed to her that he's slow with everybody.
Yeah.
That he's reserved and he lets his guards down very, 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 very slowly.
Yeah.
So But when the friend told Christina how Henry emotionally supported her through a tough time, Christina's reaction kind of gave us hope that maybe, there's a flip in her brain.
There's a person in there.
That her taking the lead for the time being to help him feel comfortable, would be something that she'd be willing to do. That was short-lived.
Took a dinner.
That was short-lived.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we were talking about how Christina admits, early on in one of the first episodes, she talked about being a party girl, and then she's talked about how she's not used to being the assertive one. Yeah. She's used to the guys being assertive with her, and yet you get the feeling that these are shallow relationships that she's been dealing with, because
otherwise she wouldn't be where she is now.
Right. Otherwise you wouldn't be on Married at First Sight, right? So she's used to shallow relationships. And she said tonight, all my relationships start out physical.
Exactly.
Which means there's no depth.
Yeah. Which means that this is just as awkward for her. Right. Even though, because she's verbal and she seems a little bit more
outgoing,
mainstream, basically, that she's not the one with the problem. But she has just as much of a problem with, I think,
his kind of personality.
Or, well, not just his personality, but the fact that she's now dealing with the personality, with the person, with who this person is, and trying to become a little bit more in depth as opposed to just the activity that you do, but finding out who the person is. That's something that she's not accustomed to doing.
Right.
And the little bit that you find out in the time that you spent, that's like that default time, that we've talked about in the past. And just because of the time that you spend together, you find out what you can, and that's it. Versus being deliberate and being, intentional and putting forth an effort and just being open and objective and patient. And so, I mean, it's just as awkward as Henry is on his minimalism.
His reservedness.
Yeah.
his I don't even say inability, but his hesitancy to engage.
I think he just overthinks.
Yeah, but then, as I said, their lack of chemistry does not help him.
True. No, true.
And their lack of chemistry does not help him.
And I don't think he knows how to filibuster to get to a point.
No, because he's not a chatter.
No, he doesn't. Right.
He doesn't know how to chat superficially.
And right now they need anything that they can get. And superficial would be wonderful.
What was interesting, though, that we commented on is when she got real nitpicky and confrontational, he didn't back down.
Right.
Now, he got frustrated. Mm-hmm. And, his tics started going.
He talked more at that time than he
ever had, though. He did not let her steamroll him, which shows that he's
has
not.
It in him.
Yeah, he's not just a rollover. He's not a rollover puppy, and you just do what you want.
Right. He's just quiet.
Right. Yeah. So it was nice to see that aspect, which let us know that he does have some gumption.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. He definitely does.
And they had a really little teeny, he initiated, what would you like to drink? And she compromised because she really wanted red wine. And she felt that he was really leaning toward rosé. And she compromised.
Rosé. And she said, well, I was thinking about the red, but you want rosé. Okay, we're going to have rosé.
Yeah. But, and of course her friends kind of challenged Henry, challenged his deliberateness.
Yeah. But go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
The other thing The other thing that was demonstrated in the whole friend process, coming over and having the get together, was our tip that says friends outside of the marriage need to be friends of the couple.
Of the couple, yes.
When you have, especially if you're marrying later in life, like we were in our 30s when we met and got married, so we had a long time of having friends.
Yeah,
right.
Of life.
And so, you know, it's important that when you get married, your friends become friends of both of you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, and it's not to say that you have to be, you know, bosom buddies or best friends with who his friends are and vice versa. But you do want to be able to talk and find out things you have in common, and maybe have some activity together as a group or with the couple, as well as, you know, maintaining some of your activities individually.
Right. Well, what you should do is you should allow your spouse to feel comfortable with the people who you are going to be surrounded by.
Right.
If at any time they are not in that company. So your spouse, if they're not in that company and they know that you are with those friends,
wouldn't have any concerns.
Right. Exactly. That's all it is. I mean, you allow them to get to know who your circle is, what you're about, what they do, who they are, and their behavior within a setting that everybody can kind of be themselves, so that you can observe exactly who they are with your spouse, who your spouse is with them, so that if at any time you're not there, you don't have any concerns.
Right.
No questions, no doubt. And, you know, and that's comforting. Because if for no other reason, you know that your friends have your back.
Right.
So if there's anything that goes down, these are people I can trust you to be with, and you'll be taken care of.
Right. Right.
So.
Okay. A couple of other things. Karen and Miles finally verbalizing some needs. Because that's what Pastor Cal challenged him to do last week was, you know, as a giver, you know, you tend to always put other people before yourself. And Pastor Cal told Miles that he needed to verbalize what he needs too, because he's in this just as much as Karen is. And so he was able to do that, and verbalize that he needed that his one of his love languages
affirmation
is words of affirmation. Right, words of affirmation. And again, we have one of our tips in this book: frequent words of praise keep happiness and joy alive.
Just a little tidbit,
because actually
there's a lot in this book.
That's one of your love languages.
It is, yeah.
Is words of affirmation. And, you know, so it means that if I am trying to love him the way he needs to be loved, need to verbalize when I'm thankful, when I'm grateful for things that you do, when things that I notice, when he's looking good, when he's smelling good, you know, and just, you know, giving him praise. There are people who need to hear that.
On occasion, not a daily thing.
No.
Or, you know.
And you don't want it to be disingenuous or, you know, non-authentic.
Yeah.
You know, this is not about stroking egos or buttering people up.
And it's not to say that some egos don't need to be stroked, but fortunately, I don't.
He's not one of those. Yay me. But you know, so I'm glad that he was able to tell Karen that, and she admitted that that's a little tough.
Yeah.
That's not something she's used to being comfortable with, but she would work on it.
Yeah, and I think that she's just a little reserved.
A
In
little?
in
She may not be
comparison,
as reserved as Henry, but she's
no.
running a close second.
Yeah. Well, at least she smiles and gives you eye contact.
This is true.
So
This is very true.
it's not as obvious, but she expressed it in a way that how she does things may not necessarily be exactly how you do it or how Miles does it, but she said that she'd be willing to work on it. So I'm looking forward to her effort.
Yeah, and she let Miles kiss her. They kissed a couple times.
Yeah. She
On a
sat
dare.
on his lap.
Well, on a dare,
Mm-hmm.
but at least she did it.
Yeah.
And, so he got a little bit more than he'd been used to getting.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. And of course, our I'm not going to say our favorite couple, but the two who have had the easiest time thus far.
The best chemistry.
The best chemistry, that's a good way to put it, of course. Amani and Woody.
Yeah.
And Amelia and Bennett.
Yeah.
Amani and Woody, Amani, I love her because she just comes across as balanced
Mm-hmm.
and level-headed.
Yeah.
And, Woody's friends couldn't even, they were shocked at
Woody was like,
how
I ain't never seen Woody.
the transition from single Woody to married Woody.
And it's just been 2 weeks,
Because
we
we expressed that
There was a concern.
hesitancy in the beginning because
He's a player.
He's a player and he enjoys playing and partying, but he has in these 2 weeks
he's played with his wife.
Yeah, and he has shown himself to be more mature than I expected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, I think for guys, if we are honest with ourselves, we look for a relationship in which we can be free, vulnerable, and I guess vulnerable definitely is the word, but just free enough to not have to worry about being taken advantage of. And I think Amani expressed that through her willingness to be there, and she was vocal and very communicative in her willingness to explore, but it was going to be a mutual situation, that we would both walk through this journey together, however quickly or however slowly we do it, but we're doing it together. And Woody was on board. He didn't force any issues. The fact that he enjoyed her, he liked her, he was going to be as patient as he needed to be.
We already said there's chemistry there.
Yeah.
And when you have chemistry, that makes everything
that'll change
easier. And you're pretty much find yourself going at the same pace.
Yeah. Well, you find yourself becoming the person that you want to be because you're comfortable enough with a person to be who you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what relationships are all about, where you can be all of who you want to be. And you don't have to, even being by yourself, sometimes you have to put on the air that everything's fine. It's never fine when you're by yourself. Nobody likes to be by themselves. You can be by yourself, but that's not your preferred lifestyle.
For some.
But
we were created to be social beings.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
And from that standpoint, you long to have social interaction.
Communication, interaction.
Yeah.
And not saying that everybody's marrying type or everybody's marrying
No,
material,
but as social beings, you still want to have social interaction with your circle of friends.
Yeah.
Or your family.
And even if it comes down to one friend.
Right.
But that's that one friend that you can be all of who you intend to be.
And you used the right word in the beginning, saying free.
Yeah.
You can be free.
Yeah.
So So it's fun to watch Amani and Woody
Mm-hmm.
and Amelia and Bennett, in their interaction, because so far, so good.
Yeah, great.
I think the last thing, going back to Olivia and Brett, she showed some openness in initiating a budget session, a budgeting session. Although she's been singing the same tune of her fear of him not wanting to spend any money and do anything fun, I'm like, okay, let's stop that tune, because if you keep focusing on that, it's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
There you go.
Okay.
Exactly.
But she showed a little bit of openness and initiated a budgeting session. And the one thing I didn't like is when Brett doesn't agree with something, he tends to belittle it.
Yeah, he has a condescending attitude.
Yeah. And I didn't like that, because he was kind of doing that about the whole financial thing, even when he was talking to his friend. And for whatever reason, I had it. Okay, here we go. Our last tip from the book: respect each other's needs and ideas as important. Doesn't matter if it's not yours.
True.
Doesn't matter if you don't think you agree with it.
Yeah. Or
but if it's coming from your significant other, your spouse, it's important
to them.
Exactly. And that's why it's important to you.
Right, exactly. If it's important to them, it should be important enough to you to allow it to be important to them.
And if you
recognize it.
And if you want to interject your idea or your way of doing things, and this becomes very challenging in all relationships, even in ours. You tend to think that your way is the best way, because it's
yours.
What you've been using.
Yeah.
You think your ideas are the best ideas because you value your intelligence.
True.
And you are probably very intelligent. But then so is the other person.
True.
And we can talk about this later, but that's where you really have to understand your needs versus your wants, and the difference between needs and wants, and style versus need, because how I do things is not going to be always how he does things, and vice versa. And we have to be able to not necessarily, compromise, but talk about the other person's ideas from a place of respect, whether you agree with them or not.
And just being objective.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other ways of doing things, and people are allowed to be different. I mean, we are different. No matter how close we become, we are still individuals.
No matter how many sentences we finish for each other, because we do that all the time.
All the time.
But we're still different.
True. And we will always be different.
And that needs to be respected, and not trivialized, and not belittled.
Definitely.
So, did we cover everybody?
I believe we did.
I think we covered everybody this time, and we covered all of tonight's issues. And so with that, we are going to sign off. Thank you to those who've been providing feedback. We enjoy reading.
Please continue.
Yes, because we enjoy reading what you say and responding back to you, either with a comment or a like. And I try to do that. I don't get to it as fast as I should, but you can be sure that we are reading and enjoying the dialogue on our Professional Lover YouTube page. And welcome to the new subscribers. And we are so glad that you found us. And share it with people that you know who you think could benefit from the things that we have to say and what we share from our own marriage. So until next week, as always, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Enjoy.
Peace.